Well, this is a different setting, isn't it? So let's knock 3 times and let's get this started. Hey guys, it's Z back with another episode of Observant Freemasonry, and today you can tell that I've changed scenery on you guys. I'm out in my backyard. You can see some of my garden growing, and I thought this would be a really great opportunity to tell you about kind of a circumstance that I've had to work through as a worshipful master in the recent past, and kind of tell other worshipful masters what I've learned and things along those lines to help provide you guys with a little bit of reassurance if you have to do that. Now, in a couple of videos ago, I talked about the three lesser lights, the sun, the moon, and the master of the lodge. And in that video, I had said that we as worshipful masters should be reading our scriptures daily like Moses was, and he came down and his face shone because of the glory of God. And that's why people don't cross in front of the three great lights when we're in the east. And so I was recently doing that. I'm always kind of trying to read my Bible and do my scripture readings and things along those lines. And one thing that's really struck me very recently was the parable of the seeds that fell onto good soil. Now, before we get into that, let me explain to you how all of these circumstances came around. Unfortunately, in the recent past, I've had to get rid of a man from my lodge, right? And years and years and years ago, when I first became a worshipful master, I never really pictured myself having to do that, and I always looked very kind of brokenheartedly on those lodges that had to do that, because like, what a black eye that they have a Mason that didn't do the right thing, and clearly our lodges aren't doing the right thing and teaching the right lessons and blah blah blah, and really it was a very young way to look at certain things and not a very wise way to look at things. So what I mean by that is, in the parable of the seeds that are thrown on the soil, some fall on the sidewalk and they never take root, and the birds come and they take the seed and off it goes. And we think a lot about that, like Freemasonry, like the guy we talk to about Freemasonry, who kind of hears it and just kind of goes, whatever, and just kind of goes on his way. Then we talk about some that kind of grow on the sidewalks or in the cracks of the sidewalks, and they don't, because there's no dirt, there's no soil, nothing along those lines, they don't have very strong root systems, and they kind of fall away, when times and the weather don't necessarily play well with them. And we can think of our Freemasons like that. Maybe you guys have to do catechisms in your jurisdiction. I know we have to do it in ours, and that's some of the time where you see those guys kind of slip away. They had no root. Or they become that very young master mason, and they never really kind of dug into anything, and they don't have that root and they go away, and that does happen. But then we also talk about the seed that fell on the soil and then it was surrounded by weeds, right? And that's where we're going with today. Unfortunately, I had a man in my lodge that eventually grew to be a weed and did things that were very unmasonic. And using that parable, it talks about how the seed can grow, but then the weeds will choke it out, and then it's really not worth anything. And as a worshipful master, I had to take a look and see that I had a weed in the garden that I was growing in my Masonic lodge. And I have a lot of really good fruit, and it takes a very long time, as worshipful masters know, to get that soil ready for the fruit and the food that you're getting ready to grow. You have to come out, you have to plan it all accordingly, you have to make sure that everything is put where it needs to be. It's not just kind of like coming out one weekend, digging some holes, putting some seeds in and covering it up. It can be that, but you're not going to produce a very good harvest. When you put a little bit more work into it and you really get that good compost and things along those lines, then we can see that seed grow to that 20, 30 times more that we're told about in the Holy Scriptures. And in my lodge, if I think of my lodge as my garden, the work that I do to that is not just me coming into a meeting, running business and going. I'm trying to produce good soil for those seeds that I'm planting in my members to grow, and to make sure that they multiply 20, 30, 40 times and grow in their Masonic knowledge and become men of distinction. However, unfortunately, I did have that weed, and I had to get rid of that weed. And you know what? I'm A-okay with that, because I can tell you this: that weed choking out one of my plants isn't worth a thing to me. That plant is what's worth it to me. So if you ever happen to be a worshipful master And you have to get into that circumstance where you have to go through and you got to weed your garden. You got to get rid of one of those guys from your Masonic Lodge, because they are nothing but weeds choking out the other plants and the good name of Freemasonry. Then as a Mason and as a worshipful master, do it. Get your hands dirty, go in, grab the weed and rip it out. Because you know what? What's most important is that vegetable, that fruit, that garden that you're growing, and not the weed that's doing nothing but trying to destroy it. Okay? So I hope and pray that you will never have to have that occurring in your garden. Chances are you probably will, because it is a garden and you're going to have to go through and weed it. But when you do, know that you're doing the right thing. And then what you do is you take that and you toss that over into that burn pit over there, and you let those weeds just go up in smoke, and you focus on everything great that's happening in what you're actually planting. So until next time, guys, stay fervent.